My name is Tanya. Uh, Me and Ritika worked on the landscape plan for the ecology and restoration of South Park Strt Cemetery. Ritika, unfortunately, is quite unwell, so she will not be able to attend the meeting, but I will be speaking on her behalf as well. Um, I'll just start. So, uh, what I wanted to approach for this particular study, the survey that we started out with, was to understand how historic and heritage spaces in the city over time, while the city develops, these historic sites become pockets, almost islands for urban ecology to bloom. And because they are preserved from the hustle bustle of the city, it allows a lot of biodiversity, a lot of wildlife, a lot of vegetation to take hold into the site and grow and provide a lot of ecological services um, for the city, for the community, and also, of course, for the global uh, climate that we are faced with today. When we look at the issues in climate change, if we want to look at a global perspective, we need to look at the local aspects as well and see how that leads to the larger picture. So that was the introduction for the study, which me and Lepida collectively undertook. So starting with the condition survey, this is the on the top left is the entrance to the site. Underneath that is a parking structure right behind it. And on the right side, you can see a building, which was initially the North Park Strt Cemetery that got converted, got sold to real estate, and now it no longer is a green space. So, like Nita ma'am rightly pointed out, such green spaces very fast are being converted into structures, building structures, and losing um, the essence, the ecological essence that they were providing to the city and to the community. Um, when we enter the site, sorry, when we enter the site, we see a lot of the monuments. The landscape is dominated by large heritage structures, the monument itself, and also a lot of old trees. And what we observed on our first study there was that a lot of wildlife and biodiversity has sort of integrated with the historic structure. So we saw a lot of uh, rare plants and animals that are inhabiting the monument itself, as well as the old trees, which have probably been there for around at least 100 years that we could see, but probably a lot older as well. We try to understand what the use of the site was like. So we saw a lot of tourists, a lot of visitors coming. Some were painting, some were just coming there for leisure, enjoying the space. Um, we also observed what is the kind of the natural landscape is dominated the the kind of vegetation that we see in Kolkata. It is what we call the moist deciduous kind of tree species, and that is what we saw here as well. Um, there is a small nursery that has been established in a part of the cemetery, which is being propagated, and a wide variety of ornamental plants are being propagated here. We did observe in our survey some issues with the nursery that is being managed here. A lot of the plants that they have been propagated have sort of started to overtake the monuments and causes a lot of damage due to moisture and seepage and dampness. This was a major issue that we observed on the site, and well, that was of waterlogging. So a large part of our east and southeastern zones have were waterlogged. We saw this during the monsoons, but even post monsoon, we observed the soil to be very wet, very clay, and water. There was a lot of water on site. One of the reasons why this is because the groundwater table of the site is quite high. So that is why the water on site is collecting. And another reason why is that the site is right next door to a wetland or a pond, the Rowden Square, and the ecology of Rowden Square is heavily influencing the ecology of site. So because of that, we saw a lot of aquatic birds and some water reptiles coming to site on this towards this site as well. But an issue that we observed because of that the water logging was that a lot of the monuments were um, damp for a large part of the year, and as you can see, they were showing a lot of sign of distress because of that. Um, We also observe that some form of management needs to happen regarding the organic waste on site. So as you can see in the left side of the picture, there was uh, an issue of waste management and debris that could be better managed in the future. And another was, as you can see on the right, we observed a lot of logging um, that was happening. In some cases, it was for the protection of the monument, but we were unable to understand other reasons for why that might be because a lot of the trees that we saw that were cut off were quite far away from the monuments and were not causing any damage. So we are quite unsure as to why this was happening, but it was happening at quite a uh, large scale. And while we visited the site, in our first few sites, the site was a lot greener, it was a lot denser, the vegetation was a lot more. But towards the end, it started sparsing. It became more and more sparse and a lot more dry, um, bringing down the ecological value. Um, so we started to observe what were the ecological values and functions and services that the site was providing to the city, to the community, and the area. And the first one that we observed was that the air quality of the site was very clean. There was very low pollution because of the large number of trees, the old trees on site. And how we understood that was with the presence of lichen, which is very rare to see in a city like Kolkata. But yet we saw at least three to four different species of lichen on the monuments. Lichen is a bioindicator of clean air. Um, the second important ecological service that the site is providing is that uh, it is minimizing the urban heat island effect. So the urban heat island effect is basically the phenomenon where the city is hotter in temperature, it has higher temperatures and it's much hotter than the surrounding areas due to pollution, due to industrial activity, due to cars and too much pavement, um, too much built area that absorbs a lot of the sun's heat and does not let it out. And it has been found that richly vegetated areas within the city significantly reduces the urban heat island effect. So as you may see in the South Park Strt Cemetery and the Rowden Square, which is the pond underneath it, is right in the middle of a very clustered um, urban environment, and it is one of the major green spaces in the area. The third important ecosystem function that we observed was that these pictures are that of the Robin Square, which is right across the boundary wall of South Park Strt Cemetery, so they share a boundary. And this is a very old wetland ecosystem, very essential to local biodiversity. It has we observed uh, really uncountable number of rare species and aquatic plants, aquatic animals, some migratory birds, a lot of old trees, and interesting grassland ecosystems all taking place. And the ecology of both the South Park Strt Cemetery and Robin Square are coexisting uh, to help balance water cycles. So they're allowing more rainwater conservation, groundwater recharge, better hydrological cycles. Uh, The next ecosystem service that we observed was it is helping improve health and well-being. Since it is this green area which the community is being able to use, uh, and we know that urban parks in this in a very clustered urban environment do allow spaces where we can reduce our stress, have better mental health, allow for some physical activity, and so on. At the same time, the South Park Strt Cemetery is providing uh, habitats to urban wildlife. So, in the case of in the monuments, we observed some snails, we saw some interesting species of moths and butterflies. We saw a lot of bats that had taken cover underneath the structures as well. Um, so this is where Lipika had done a survey of the kind of ground cover and the species in the ground cover and the lower levels of vegetation that are present on the site. Some of them are yet to be identified, but we just have them
पॉकेट
in
में
the
लेकर
survey.
घूमता हूँ अरे स्टॉन हो गया
Some interesting birds that we have seen on site. So we had the house crow, the oriental magpie robin. This was a survey which Deepika had carried out, in which she had gone into some detail about what is the kind of biodiversity in the water, what is the kind of biodiversity in the ground. So in the water, we saw a lot of interesting species of mollusks. In fact, quite a few which are very rare to see in the city. We saw some aquatic birds, again very rare in the city. There were checkered keelback, which is a kind of snake, water snake that we have here. We saw some striders and crabs and a lot of interesting fungi, which we haven't been able to identify yet. So, and in the ground, in the ground area, we saw uh, basically a lot of insect life. Um, yeah. We also did the survey of what are the kind of trees on site. So there were mangoes, tamarind, neem, uh, gulmohar. All most of them, while the diversity of trees was not very high, but the age of the trees was they were really old, and the older a tree is, the more carbon that it is able to hold, and the more air it is able to purify. And we did a survey on the birds as well. Uh, the next ecosystem service that we observed to be occurring by the South Park, that was carried out by the South Park Strt Cemetery, was that it was um, a part of a potential green corridor that we could see as when we zoom out and look at the city. There are two major green eco hotspots. So you have the Hooghly River and there is the East Kolkata wetlands on the right and the Hooghly River on the left. And South Park Strt Cemetery lies right in the heart of that. And as you may see, the green spaces are the fragmented eco spaces, and the yellow is the urban fabric. Um, so again, you can see the Hooghly River here. I just tried to highlight what are these green spaces. So we had everything from the Maidan, the St. Paul's Cathedral, the Alipur Zoo, the Victoria Memorial, uh, Rowden Square, Strt Cemetery, Cobra Burial Grounds, and East Kolkata Wetlands, and so on. I've just gone into some detail of some of the integral parts of such a corridor that we observed, and I would like to mention again that South Park Street was falling right in the heart of this particular, this potential corridor. So this is Rowdy Square. Like I mentioned, we saw some interesting mollusks, some snakes, some interesting fungi, a lot of aquatic birds. This is a nature study park, which is just beside South Park Strt Cemetery as well, just at a walking distance. And it is a large water body, which is also allowing a lot of interesting aquatic birds and species to thrive. Allen Park, this is on Park Street. This is a public park with a lot of old trees. The Scottish Cemetery, which is again at a walking distance, and it is a managed biodiversity park. The St. John's Church. Uh, while this was a managed landscape and it had a lot of the vegetable gardens that were which held a lot of unique biodiversity. So it formed a part of the corridor as well. Then Park Street in itself turned out to be a major corridor and a major part of the corridor because the trees along the road are so old that they have formed a habitat in themselves. So that is something which was very surprising to us and very interesting to us as well. So as you can see, the, it's a green belt that is going right along. Finally, these are some recommendations that we came up with for the South Park Strt Cemetery. So it starts with water logging on site needs to be maintained. The drainage lines need to be desilted and better managed. Composting units can be installed. Um, the vegetation, the natural vegetation that is occurring on site could be managed more organically. Right now, there is a lot of uh, harmful chemicals and pesticides and herbicides that are being used. Better ones could be implemented, and that would significantly enhance the species diversity on site. Um, the old trees that are being felled, that definitely needs to be stopped, and one needs to understand why that is happening and how we can curb it. And finally, the nursery that is there on the site also needs to be managed in a more organic manner such that it does not damage the. Thank you.